Okay. All right. So we are now officially live. And if you are coming on, or if you were on before, my apologies because Olivia and I had a wonderful conversation. How long have we been talking, Olivia?
Oh my gosh, for over 20 minutes.
Over 20 minutes, y'all. Not realizing we were not live. hmm we had some technical difficulties, not realizing we were not live. So my apologies, my apologies, my apologies. But we are now officially live. I see that there are a few people in. If you're in, say hello, say hello, say hello. My apologies. It was not CP time, y'all. It was technical difficulties. We were in a full conversation and it was good.
Yes.
But now we're gonna do it all over again. We're just gonna call that a test run, and we're gonna call it a day and keep it moving. So, welcome to the unofficial kickoff, I guess, of the Birthing Place podcast, where you get prepped up and in position to birth the greatness that's inside of you, because you are called to greatness. Okay, who am I? I'm Taneki Dacres. If you don't know me, I'm Taneki Dacres, author, publisher, the CEO of Mind Publishing, and I like to say your literary and purpose midwife, helping you birth books, business, and walking your God given purpose. And again, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are here, say hello, say hello, say hello. We want to know who's coming in. Share this live. And yeah, today we're going to talk about the imposter syndrome with Olivia Skeffrey. Olivia and I, we've been sister friends since young adults. I'm not gonna, that's a while now. But Olivia has been so supportive of everything I've been doing throughout the years with my workshops and retreat. And most recently, my most recent cohort, writing cohort, Olivia was a part of that, and she's going to introduce herself. But today I wanted to talk about kick it off with talking about the imposter syndrome, because we're in the final half or the second half of the year, and there's some things that I know that you should have done, that I should have done by now. And, you know, there's some of us, like I said in a recent post that I just posted on TikTok, that when God has called us, that the God thing sometimes we'll have a struggle with imposter syndrome because it is bigger than us, right? And so oftentimes when God calls us, it is something that is bigger, right? It is something that we feel a little struggle in terms of our abilities, our capabilities, our gifts, our talents. And sometimes we struggle with, can I do this? Can I? And if we're not mindful, we get stuck in that paralysis analysis, that feeling inadequate, that feeling like we can't do it. And so we are on here today to inspire you, encourage you, empower you to kick that imposter syndrome and move forward. So again, I am with Olivia Skeffrey. Olivia, introduce yourself, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much for having me,
Hi,
Taniki.
Charmy.
My name is Olivia Skeffrey. Me and Taniki have been sister friends for a long time, like she said, and I thank God for her and for her inspiration in my life. I was in the most recent cohort that Taniki had with the birthing place, and I've attended her writing workshops as well as conference. Retreat rather, and I'm an aspiring author working on getting my first book published this year. As Taniki was saying, I have these goals, and I know at this point in the year I wanted to accomplish already, but here we are, and I'm still going to get it done. I also am very involved in my church in terms of ministry work with interpreting sign language and dancing, and professionally I'm an analyst, so that analysis paralysis is a very real thing, and the questioning. So, but I'm excited to be here today to talk about this imposter syndrome that affects so many people, and really helping to see getting to the other side of that.
Yeah, well, welcome, welcome. Yes, Olivia is extremely talented. And I'm super excited to have her. She did not say she is such a gifted writer, y'all. Like, I love writing. I love working with great writers. Not that I love all writers, but there's something about writers who, when they write, when we did the cohort, every time I read your thing, I was like, ooh, like it was just so good. So I'm excited about her upcoming book, and I'm excited her about her moving forward with this. We are, as we spoke about the last 20 minutes, because we were on and not knowing that we were on. But so if you're just coming on, yes, we had some technical difficulties. We had a whole chat, not realizing that we were not live. So yeah. Anywho, so we're just coming back from yesterday. Olivia and I went to Life Surge. Now, if you don't know Life Search, it has all over been on Facebook and TikTok and every social media platform. We went to the one in New Jersey yesterday. Olivia just happened to be, attending, and I was also attending. But we were just talking about, and listen, this is not about. We're not endorsing it. We're not like, we're just talking about how it impacted us. It was phenomenal, right?
Yes.
Um, John Maxwell, right?
Yes.
There was Ed Milet,
Yes. Ed Milet.
and there were how many? Like what?
Um,
Priscilla.
Priscilla Schreier,
It was
Damon
so
Vaughn,
good. It was
Tim
so
Tebow.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about some of before we get in kind of the imposter syndrome. We're talking about like what some of our takeaways. So Olivia, kind of give me rewind and kind of talk about a little bit kind of what resonated with you mostly from that. Collab.
Sure. So, one of the two things that really resonated with me the most was Ed Milet when he said that we are most qualified to help those who we used to be. And sometimes the things that we go through, difficulties, struggles, and experiences that maybe aren't our proudest moments, those are things that we may feel disqualify us. You know, if I'm struggling with something, how am I going to be an author? But the truth is, the struggle, the pain, the things that I may have experienced and others have experienced helps to qualify them to help people who are currently in that struggle, currently in that pain. Because without going through that experience, you can't really speak to it. You can't put out your hand to help someone else up if you're still down. And the thing is, if you focus on just being down and not on what you've overcome and all your experiences that give you the ability to be able to help someone, then you can kind of stay stuck thinking I'm not qualified to do this, but in fact it's the opposite. And you know, as a person of faith, like, and this was a faith-based event yesterday, just some of the takeaways is that God qualifies us, and God qualifies us by allowing us to go through certain experiences even though he's with us. Sometimes we don't realize it, and the things that we feel are not like the best about ourselves are the very things that will qualify us to help someone else. And in addition to that, the other thing that really resonated with me was John Maxwell speaking about how failure and success are not, you know, opposite ends of a spectrum, but they're actually very close together. They're sometimes aligned and connected because it is our failures that help us to learn, to grow, so that we can have certain successes. And I think he said that when he asked certain people, if you had to do certain things over again in terms of the things that they failed at, what would what would you do? And they said,
Yeah,
I wouldn't change it, because if I changed it, then I wouldn't have learned, so that I wouldn't have had the success later on that I had because of the failures that we do learn and grow from. So that was really powerful to me, to think of, how failure is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow, so that the success that we see, even all the great speakers who spoke on yesterday, we can look at their success, but it's really sometimes their failures that help to lead to those successes. And it's the same for us. So,
absolutely. Well said. 100%. When I tell you, for me, it was extremely freeing, right? Because as an entrepreneur, as someone who has always believed that the sky is the limit, and if I wanted to reach Mars, I was going to figure out how to reach it. I was going to do a plan and figure it out. And um, but somewhere along the way, for me, when things don't work out the way I thought it would work out, right? Somewhere along the way, that kind of mentality of I can do anything becomes kind of, it eats away. And I don't want to say failure, but when things don't go the way I expected it, it kind of eats away at the confidence in some respect, right? Because for me, in my 20s, I opened a Subway restaurant. I've always been an entrepreneur. In my college years, when I was doing my degree in computer information system, I had a website with a friend of mine called Molasses Magazine. And then I had a Subway restaurant right after college and was the youngest single black female in Bed-Stuy. Shout out to Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, at Fulton and Nostrand, did that. And, somewhere along the way, for me, it was like, can I, especially when I gave my life to Christ, the enemy comes in. I always say the enemy does not roll out a red carpet and say, go forward, right? And for me, it was so freeing when I heard all those speakers spoke about their failures, right? And I don't like to use the word failures because I feel like you said, everything is a learning experience. But for me, it was so freeing, like to know that, listen, you get, like John Maxwell said, you try, or you try something new, you test it, you learn from it, or you fail, you learn, and then you do it again, pretty much. And every time you do it again, you're closer to success, right? So for me, that was, and I think earlier I was saying to you, what he said was, the whole idea of humility. I want to make sure I bring up the point. He said, understanding, no, he said, keep failure and success together. It keeps us humble. When you keep success close to failure, it gives you resiliency. So humility and resiliency, both failure and success, mold us and shape us, right? And it's just so important that we remember that. And going back to even that, our experiences, um, basically are what's shaping our future and shaping our destiny, or giving us the tools and equipping us, right? Because one of the things that we talked about earlier also was, um, Mallet. What's his first name again?
Oh, Ed.
Ed
Yeah.
Milet. Yes, yes, yes. When he gave, y'all, this man, what an awesome storyteller. And not only awesome, there was not a dry eye in that space. Okay.
Yes.
He spoke about pain and birthing
Mhm.
purpose out of pain, and how, um, growing up with an alcoholic father, and how, for me, what resonated with me was, this idea of one more day, one more day. When his dad came to him and said, I'm going to try, becoming sober one more time, one more time. It was one more time, one more time. And what are we doing with that one more time, right? And even as his dad was, going through cancer, and he's like, one more time, like I played with my best friend, one more time. And this idea of one more. But even when he talked about when his sister was diagnosed um,
Ed.
diabetes, and that the path to success is oftentimes lonely, and he just didn't know. He felt hopeless. He felt like he didn't have what he needed to have to help her, and he decided to take a walk because she was suicidal, and he just didn't know what to do. And he talked about the fact that in his neighborhood, in this very affluent gated community, that as he was walking by this particular house, he thought to himself, like, he remembered that there's a doctor that lives here,
Mhm.
and the Holy Spirit told him to jump the fence. And as he jumped the fence, he asked the doctor, what do you do? And he was like, yeah, I created, what was it,
It
the
was like a laser surgery technique for people who were diabetic who were experiencing blindness, which is what was going on with his sister.
Exactly.
Depression.
He
Yeah.
literally had what his sister needed for her sight to come back. And the idea that what he said, which was so powerful, was the fact that, if he did not, Ed Mallet did not walk in his God given purpose, did not do what God had called him to do, he would not be in that affluent community at that time. If that doctor didn't walk in his God given purpose and do what God had called him to do, he would not be uh, in that house, in that community at that time, so that his sister can get the help that she needed. And so everything that God has called us to do, it is purpose, is for purpose, and it's also to help others, including our families. That for me was powerful. And again, ending with one more time. What are we doing with that one more time?
Yes.
Right?
Powerful.
Like, I left there like, okay, okay, what's going on here? We can't. So that is why we decided to have a whole discussion on like imposter syndrome and kind of moving forward in purpose and stuff like that. So talk to me a little bit, Olivia, about how imposter syndrome may have hindered you before. How did it show up? How did it kind of hinder you, um, in past, attempts to move forward?
Okay.
And while you're doing that, forgive me, y'all. I just want to make sure that my computer is plugged in. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, for me, imposter syndrome has kind of showed up in several different ways. Sometimes when I may receive certain accolades for certain things that I've accomplished. It's that questioning, that doubt, like, oh, am I really able to do what people are thinking or expecting of me? It's that strive for like perfectionism to try to make sure that everything is correct and right, and double checking and rechecking myself because, once again, questioning. You're in a position, you're in a place and you start like having these second thoughts like, am I really able to do it? And what that can also, how it shows up too, what it could also do is lead to some of the hesitancy, not completing certain things that
Mhm.
I am qualified to complete and to do because of the questioning, the inner questioning inside. And sometimes as you question yourself and you try to perfect everything, it can lead to anxiety. So, and that anxiety can weigh over my head and distract and deter and cause that hesitation. So that's how it showed up for me.
Yeah, I love that you said perfectionism because sometimes I also struggle with perfectionism. Sometimes we don't realize how these things mask themselves. And we don't understand how fear masks itself, right? Like even
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, because that perfectionism, I want to get this well, I want to do this well because, I do things in excellence. Yeah, we do things in excellence, but there's a difference, right? And the more we delay, the more we delay what we are designed and destined to do, right? The more it is that we're every day, every second that we say tomorrow, or let me perfect this and not move forward, is another day that we are not we're further away from our God-given purpose and our destiny, right? I had to really, for me, accept. There's a saying I heard someone say, "Progress is better than perfection,"
Mhm.
and I had to say every time I'm like trying to perfect something, I'm like, "Progress is better than perfection." Okay,
Mhm.
make progress, perfect later. And so that is so important that we acknowledge that perfectionism. So it shows up, you said perfectionism shows up in kind of like questioning whether or not you are qualified, if you have what it takes, right?
Mhm.
What motivates you even when you know that you're struggling with the imposter syndrome?
What motivates me is my faith in God and understanding that, it is God who called me to do these things, like the writing. It's something that I felt that unction, which is Holy Spirit, telling me to do this. And even during the process, one of the things that really motivates me as I was in the cohort is that as I started doing this writing, I was just getting more ideas and understanding of how it's going to come together. And sometimes, even in the writing process, you might get something for chapter 8 and you're working on chapter 2. It's like, okay, I could shift and change. So, really, how God shows up and just everything that He calls us to do, everything He's called me to do, He has provided.
Yeah.
There's information, there's plans, and there's things that are going to come, but really having faith and trusting that it will come and just pushing through and really understanding one of the big things is that there's a person connected to the work that I'm doing. I'm not doing this just for myself. So
Right.
what causes me to push through is to understand this is not a journal entry, but this is something that will impact someone else's life. And there's someone who is in a place that I once was who can benefit from what I am working on and what I'm working through. And that really pushes me because it's not just about me. As someone who is a person of faith, I believe we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves. We're supposed to treat others as we would want to be treated. We are supposed to really show forth our love for others. And that is a way for us to do that is for us to push through our own fears, our own doubts, and do what God has called us to do because that has such an impact to bless, to encourage, and to help inspire someone else. As there's been others before me
Mhm.
who have inspired me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that you kind of said, let me focus and recognize it's not about me, but it's about the person that I'm called to. One of the things, and to do that is to recognize one, that oftentimes the things that we're hearing about ourselves is a lie. So first recognizing the lie, right? Like, like I remember someone would always, I don't know where I heard this, but this person would always say, well, is that truth or is that your own? thoughts, right? Like, is that grounded in truth? And I think sometimes we need to stop and kind of go, well, what I'm thinking, is that grounded in truth, or is that like just kind of like the enemy gnawing at me, the enemy coming at me, right? But I think you hit the nail on the head when we recognize that it's not about us and focus on who we are called to know. That doesn't make it easy. Okay?
Mm-mm. No.
Truth be told, you can focus and still, because oftentimes these are behaviors and habits that we have practiced over the years, that sometimes we don't recognize that it's showing up, but it's imposter syndrome, like the perfectionism, like the procrastination, right? Like the and again, we mask it by saying different things, right? And doing different things. So, um, so what where do you see God taking you in this season, and tell us a little bit about what you're working on, because you talked about earlier that that we're called, right, to minister, or called to the people who are in the same situation that we were in, right? And let me say this for everyone who might be struggling with imposter syndrome, because one of the things imposter syndrome will say, right, one of the things that will happen is you will think that, how can I do this when this is happening in my life? How can I minister to these people when this is happening to my family? How can I do this when I feel like I haven't been 100% delivered from that, right? Um, and so, for everyone who may be struggling with the, how can I do this when this is happening, kind of what's your advice to them?
My advice would be is to refocus. So
Mhm.
sometimes we get so focused, as you said, about what's happening in our own lives. And, from my experience, I've had opportunities. I interpret sign language at church, but I've been asked by several people to, teach sign language. And I didn't feel I was qualified. So I missed those opportunities. I remember being asked to, write for a restaurant for, their reviews, to help them with their website, their online marketing. And I was like, oh, I don't know, because I don't think I have experience with that or whatever. And opportunities come, and the questioning of self kicks in, and then opportunities are missed. So I would say, we have to refocus and say, if someone has asked you to do certain things, or if you have a calling to do certain things, it's because God sees that in you. And sometimes people can see in you what God does, what you don't realize, what God is showing you sometimes. So to really refocus and not focus on what I don't have, what I can't do, or what my current situation is, but what could that end look like? What could the purpose be from doing this? And really seeing how I can help or inspire somebody else. Even the people who are around me who are seeing me do this thing, they can say, well, she never did that before. How is she doing that? And then maybe there's things that they could do that they probably disqualified themselves from. So I say refocus and stop focusing on self and any deficiencies you may find in yourself, and focus on the things that you are capable of doing. And going back to even what we were learning on yesterday, like that one more day, instead of putting off something one more day, doing it for one more day, and then another day and another day, until you're down that road years and years, where you have accomplished that thing. So really refocusing your mind and not focusing on anything that you feel is a deficit or a deterrent from what you can do, and focusing on the things that you are good at and that you're able to do, so that you can help others and encourage others. And also it encourages you, but remember who you are, who God called you to be, and what other people can see in you for the good.
I love that. Refocus, remember who you are. And i- in order to refocus, we got to have a good why, right? So we're refocusing on two things. We're refocusing on the who, and we're refocusing on the why, right? Like, who are we called to, right? That is the person. Like I always say, you know what I talk about in the workshops and in the cohort. Like you have to have a big enough why. right? You got to identify that why. You got to identify, why am I doing this? And I like to talk about this. It's not a surface level why. You remember we did the 7 levels deep, and
Yes.
we did, and even just in life, whatever that we're trying to accomplish, digging deep for that why, because it is that why that's going to motivate you beyond anything that you might be feeling, right? Any tactics of the enemy, your why and your who. I always say that, like for me, even creating an avatar. I don't remember if I made y'all do an avatar. Did I make you do an avatar in the cohort? I can't
No.
remember if I did. Okay, all right. So even creating, like, I like to give my who a face and a name, right? Like, who am I called to? And I always say this: your who is you, right? Like, and we talk about your who is either the younger version of you or the older version of you, right? Or
Yes.
some version of yourself. Right, your who is that person, because again, like you said, and we heard, we heard yesterday, we heard in the cohort when we did it, that at the end of the day, you have to know that you are called to a particular person and not to everyone, right?
Yeah.
But to define the who and what they're going through. And if we're going to step out, we know that, going back to Ed Millet, forgive me if I'm butchering his name, but going back to him, that there's purpose in the pain, right? And so your who, if it's an older version of you, it is that person who's going through what you have made it through. And perhaps still going through it. Because sometimes, here's the next thing. I've worked with people who are like, I can't finish this book because I realize I'm still dealing with some of the things I'm writing about. Right. But we know that we all struggle. Paul had a thorn. We don't know what the thorn is. No one knows what the thorn is, right? But
Mm.
we know there was a struggle. But yet, so he was still called, right? And so, refocusing on your who and your why, making sure your why is not that surface level. Oh, because dig deep, why? And oftentimes that is going back to it's attached to an experience, it's attached to something in your childhood, it's attached to something deeper than you think it's attached to, and it's deeper, and it's grounded in purpose, right? It is grounded in purpose. So identify, refocus on your who and your why. Okay. So, where do you feel like God is, like, how are you moving forward? I know you're writing the book, but what else are you working on and are thinking of moving forward
So some other things after this book, I do have other books that God has laid on my heart. So one of the things that, in terms of a why, in terms of what drives me too, is that I have to get this done so that I can get the next ones done too. Because, when God sometimes pours into you, he doesn't just pour into you with a limit of just that one thing or that one book. So in addition to that, being able to push through to different goals within like ministry, as someone who is involved in different ministries at my church, including like dancing and signing, sometimes there are difficult assignments that come up, or it seems difficult, but understanding that there's nothing to fear, that God will equip me for everything that he's called me to. So when there's some kind of difficult piece of choreography, understanding that if there's any initial failure, that there's success around the corner. So to keep striving, to keep pushing. And some of the other things I want to do in the rest of this year is travel. I do love to travel. And even with the things that are happening in the world and even in this country, sometimes there's that fear that tries to creep up and say you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. But if I feel still like within, and I feel that peace, that I should continue doing the things that were on my list of goals from the beginning of the year, including traveling, including seeing places and things that I haven't yet to see, that maybe one day I could even write about. I'm encouraged to continue on that path, because as we were speaking about before, with those doubts, that the perfectionism can lead to a lot of procrastination, because you want everything to be in order to the point where you don't move forward, you don't launch. So really, to get past that is to tear down those things that can become strongholds in my life and move forward to all the different goals that were on my list, the traveling, the accomplishing things in ministry. There's other things that I want to do that I stopped doing before in terms of playing. I play the violin, so getting back
Oh,
into that. So kind of exploring things and not limiting myself anymore, and realizing, like what was said yesterday, one more day. So what am I going to do with that time? Do things that I love and enjoy and can help to inspire others and really accomplish the goals that have purpose and that have that big why attached to it. There's people who need it. So that's what I'm looking forward to in terms of what God is doing and the revelation of everything that we learned about yesterday and the reminders. And we have to keep just encouraging ourselves. So looking at these great speakers, people who've accomplished great things, and they didn't necessarily come from a great background. So we all have that ability to overcome whatever was before and be able to help somebody. And just to clarify, when we did do the cohort, yes, we did do an inventory of our who you and we were able to kind of imagine like that person. Who are we really speaking to?
yeah.
What their age group, their age range, if there's a gender specific attached to that person, and where they might live, and just kind of imagine that. And I think that's applicable in like almost anything we are doing in life.
Mhm.
Whether it's you're a teacher or you're in the medical field, like who is that who you're doing this for, to help, to connect with, and to encourage.
Yeah, absolutely. No matter what, how purpose, like again, purpose is attached to you. Who I wanted to highlight to something you said earlier in terms of procrastination and perfectionism, because here's the thing. Underline, I think I kind of hint on that earlier because oftentimes fear shows up as procrastination and fear shows up as perfectionism, right? But again, the root of it is fear,
Yeah.
and that is why sometimes we have to do the deeper work and self analysis to say, well, why do I keep doing? Why am I doing this all the time? Like, what is? Do I have a fear of failure? Do I have a fear of what others are going to say? Do I have a fear of not being able to live up to expectations? Like, what is the underlying fear that holds us back and shows up in so many different ways? I always say fear wears many, many different masks. And unless we do the work to identify it, we'll keep going in circles and just seeing the other layer, but not seeing the deeper, issue behind that. Um, so absolutely, I just feel like at the end of the day, in 2025, as we're in July, y'all, it is the 13th of July. I see that there are some people watching. If you're watching, let me know. Um, how has the imposter syndrome shown up in your life? One, and two, as you're moving forward, because we do not have time is just going fast. And I know I say that all the time,
Mhm.
but like I just can't believe we're in July. And but before we know it, right, the year is gonna be over. And for me, I am doing a area of destiny. So I'm attending, I moved from New York, I'm in Jersey, and I started attending this new church. Um, and there's this class that they're doing called Area of Destiny. And one of the things that we were talking about that really resonated with me and stayed with me is the idea of partnering with God, right? And the idea that you kind of said it earlier in terms of timing, right? I think earlier you mentioned um, uh, something about just doing things in God's timing when God says move. And at the end of the day, for me, it was the idea of partnering with God in the season and the time that He wants me to partner because I do not want to miss God, and I don't want God to raise someone else up. I don't want God because God does not force God's will,
Mm.
right? Otherwise, that would be slavery. God gives us free will, right? God does not force God's will. God literally would nudge us through the Holy Spirit, give us inspiration and ideas. And God will give us a plan. God will give us ideas, but we have to move on them, right? And but He will not force us to do anything. And I think for me, I was talking to someone, they were like, you know, I like the idea that I have an option because God gives us free will. And I thought, I don't want, and I remember I said to her, and my fear is I don't want to miss God. Like I don't want him to say, you don't want to do it with me? I'm gonna go ahead and go raise up someone else, right? Like I'm gonna go ahead and go get Samantha down the road because she said yes. I'm like, no, because I know at the end of the day, God's will, even though difficult, even though sometimes seems overwhelming and bigger than us, I know when I tap into the power of the Holy Spirit, when I rely on God, which is a space that we need to be at all times when we're moving in purpose, right? That because it is that reliance on God that keeps us humble, that when I tap into that space and I tap into God, I know that God's plans for me are better than my plans for myself. So I don't want to miss God. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling you, that thing put a fear. I was in class, I was like, wait, hold on. I knew that, but for me, it was just a reminder of, and then it goes back to Ed. I keep talking about Ed Miller. Y'all know. I keep talking about him because for me, that whole idea of one more time, and then also just the when he said what he said, if he didn't do what he was supposed to do when he was supposed to do, then if the doctor didn't do what he was supposed to do when he was supposed to do, all of that was aligned in that moment, just so that his sister can be healed. Right?
Powerful.
Like we have no idea what's coming down in what's gonna happen. We have no idea. But when we do our part, God can use us in mighty ways, right?
Yes.
And so, listen, I'm excited. If you're on, just let us know you're on. Put something in the chat. Let us know. We want to know that you're on. Let us know if you have any questions, any thoughts about what we are saying. But I'm super. I'm excited about what God is doing in your life, Olivia. Like I said, you are such an excellent writer, and I wanted to come on and have a chat because we're always having these side conversations, and I feel like you have a lot to offer the world. And a lot of people don't know. I'm gonna put your business out there, Olivia, that you went to seminary. Okay, so this woman of God, answered the call, right? Like she went to seminary, and she is being obedient to God's call. And so, um, what would you say to your younger self?
That's a great question. I think I would tell my younger self not to rest in some of those fears. Those fears created a lot of delays, created a lot of inconsistencies, and that there is so much greatness in you because God is in you. And I feel like, just as you were speaking about what Ed Milet described, like even being here today, there was coordination and alignment and obedience that led me to the church that I'm at and that you were at, for us to meet, for us to be in the ministry we were in together, to even answer the call to the workshops and the retreats and to do certain things to get to this point. It's all, God has such a divine plan. So I would tell my younger self that God has a divine plan for you. You don't have to be fearful, but have faith, be faithful, and it will work out, because there's a lot of time I feel like I wasted just not knowing or questioning, and I could have utilized some of that energy for other things. But I thank God for his divine timing, and I thank God for second chances and opportunities as I have now to really push forward with what God has called me to do. But I do believe that when I first heard the word so many years ago that, you have a calling on your life, I remember thinking, I don't know what this means. I'm confused. So I would tell the younger version of myself to really seek God even more. And as you seek God, then all other things will be added unto you, including greater faith. Because that fear, like I said, I would tell myself not to rest in that fear, to seek God on every question and everything. And that greatness is inside of you. Because once you are connected to God, God can do great things with your life. So those are the things that I would tell the younger version of myself.
I love that. Seek God. There's greatness inside of you, right? Um, do you feel that you're exactly where you're supposed to be at this time?
Um, that's another good question. I feel that God is using where I'm at this time, yes, but exactly where I'm supposed to be. Well, I think yes and no. I feel like there's things that I probably may have preferred, but honestly, if it was supposed to be different, then maybe it would have been. So I'm embracing where I'm at
Yeah.
and what I can do with where I'm at. But there are things that I wanted to happen at this before by this time, just in life. But at the same time, I'm seeking God to say, you know what, where do you want me to go from here? What does the next day look like so that I can move forward in that right direction? And if there's anything that I'm doing that might cause delay or hindrance that's not in alignment with the plans that He has for me to prosper me, to give me a hope in the future, as the scripture says, then reveal it to me and help me to walk through that door so that I can the next day and the next day continue going in alignment with where God would have me to be in His divine timing.
Mm, okay. I love that. So, I think we all struggle with the idea of um, God's sovereignty
Hmm.
and our movement in the earth, right? Because we all, there are things that we all thought, or, if you look at your life when you were younger, like you had a whole plan, right? Like by the time I was 20, 25, 30, you know what I mean? And when things aren't, but then there's this almost rest that needs to happen. I love what you said. You're embracing where you are. And I think that is just so powerful because I think that with that becomes a rest and a contentment, right? Like I'm not content in terms of I know that God has more, but I can rest in where I am and have joy in where I am. Because there's such, if we don't allow ourselves to get there, we live in the woulda, coulda, shoulda. And the woulda, coulda, shoulda keeps us stuck in the past, right? And so I appreciate your transparency, your honesty, and just showing up today. Again, I am Taneki Dacres, author, publisher, the CEO of Fine Publishing and your literary and purpose midwife. This is the unofficial kickoff of the Birthing Place podcast, and this is Olivia Skeffrey, and we've had a wonderful conversation. It is Sunday night. It's not going to be much longer, but if you have any questions or comments, drop it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Say something. Say hello. Say something. I know some folks here. I saw that Irene Blackman was here, Cham B. And I thank you both for just dropping some comments in the chat. I hope tonight was a blessing to you. I hope it inspired you. I hope it encouraged you. Just remember these things. When imposter syndrome shows up, remind yourself, first of all, identify it as a lie. Okay. It is a lie, right? Align yourself with God's truth. Remind yourself of who you are and whose you are according to God's word, right? Step out with community. We didn't talk about this, but the importance of community. Surround yourself with truth tellers. Surround yourself with people who are encouragers. Surround yourself with people who are going to tell you and remind you of who you are. That is so important in this season. Who you surround yourself with is so important. And step out in bold, confident, God confidence, right? Knowing that there's a life attached to your obedience, whether you're writing a book, launching a business, whatever that is, there's a life attached. Know your why and know your who. Okay? So I hope you all were blessed. And Olivia, what's one last encouraging word um, for someone who's still feeling like, yeah, I hear you, but what do you want to say to them?
I would say that the longer you wait or put off or have those buts, the longer it will take to get to the great things, the purpose. So really just move, try to push past it. If they're like, if you're hesitant, then know that if you try, like we said before, not to use, let's say, the word failure, but um, if you miss, you tried. And the closer you, and the more you work on it, the closer you get to where you want to go. And remember that you're always qualified, because we don't even have to qualify ourselves, that God qualifies us. So you're qualified, you're able, and as long as you try, you're going to get closer and closer to the mark that you're trying to reach.
Amen. So you never give up. You keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. That kind of goes to like what John Maxwell said yesterday, right? Um, Testing, try things, test fast, fail a lot, fail fast, learn a lot, learn from your failures, learn fast, improve fast, re-enter fast, right?
Yes.
That was just like, so test, fail, learn, improve, re-enter. And every time you re-enter, you, because you learn something, you're closer to that success, right? And so thank you so much, Olivia. I'm excited. Where can people find you? How can people follow you? How can people know what you're doing and what you're up to? Give us your handles.
Okay, you can follow me at Lives for JC. That's LIVS, the number four, the letters JC. I'm on Instagram and TikTok, and my YouTube is also the same, Lives for JC.
Lives for JC. So y'all got that. Lives for JC. Any questions? Any comments? We're about to close out this first podcast
Mhm.
episode, I guess. I know. If you came on late, sorry, you can catch the replay, but I thank you for coming on. I thank you for joining us. Olivia, God bless you and God bless the works of your hands. It has been a pleasure working with you and helping you to birth your book. And I'm excited about what God is doing in your life. All right, y'all. So follow Olivia, support Olivia, follow Vine Publishing. If you're not following Vine Publishing, follow Taneki Dacres. Follow us all. Support us. We love you. Continue to move in your God given purpose. Know that God has great things inside in store for you. If you will move forward in faith, if you don't allow fear to stop you, if you don't allow the imposter syndrome to stop you, if you tap into who you are, the spirit of God inside of you, the Spirit of God who empowers you to birth greatness. God will do great works in you and through you, and we're excited about it. All right. So God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Have a good night. If you catch a replay, make sure to like it, comment, share, and thank you. God